I love this area. Whenever I come, this is such a beautiful place to meditate. You're behind the Mahadevi temple, birthplace of the Buddha, the water around, all the birds here. These ruins are here just to remind us to contemplate on the passive nature of reality. And where better to do that than in the lap of the nature, surrounded by water, the birds and the trees. It's a very popular story from the childhood of the Buddha, when he was young Prince Siddhartha. One day he was visiting the gardens behind the palace with his cousin Devadatta. And even if we go and see it today, just behind the palace there is this beautiful river, and along the river there are wetlands. So they're wandering in this garden, and suddenly Devadatta, his cousin, he saw a bird flying very low. So he shot the bird with an arrow, and some distance away the bird was flying, wounded bird, landed by where Siddhartha was walking. Siddhartha rushed to the bird and saw the bird wounded with an arrow, took out the arrow and tried to calm the bird, tried to calm the wound. Devadatta came looking for his bird and claimed that, I shot this bird, this is mine, give it to me. Siddhartha stayed saying, no, this bird came to me and I want to protect him. I would rather want to save him, they will kill him. So they both started arguing who the bird belongs to, and they couldn't settle. So they decided, let's go to ask your father, the king, and see who rightfully owns the bird. Devadatta, being a Sakyan prince warrior, he said, well, this is my hunt. I shot the bird, so it belongs to me. But Siddhartha said, well, it is not dead yet. If it had died, it would be yours. I'm trying to save it. I'm rescuing it, so it's mine. I won't give it to you. So both of them, they went to Siddhartha's father, King Suddhodana. Now, King Suddhodana saw a great potential in these young princes, and he wanted to teach them the method of justice. How do you arrive to a conclusion? So rather than deciding on his own, he said, well, go to the court. So he convened the court of Kapilavastu and asked them that this is the case. These two young princes, they are discussing and arguing over this crane. Whom does it belong to? After several hours of discussing with each other, all the judges came to a conclusion, and they said that this bird belongs to Siddhartha. They proclaimed that the right to life belongs to those that want to preserve it, that they want to save it. I believe this story, this moral experience, had a great imprint on the mind of this young prince, who later on became the great Buddha. And when he started teaching, the first principle he teaches that the Dharma is non-violence. The beauty of that story is that the bird Siddhartha saved in his young childhood still lives around Lumbini, today known as the Sarus crane, the tallest flying bird in the world. They still nest around the farmlands of Lumbini in the sacred garden where Buddha was born. And it's still quite a beauty to see some days in Lumbini when we walk by and see a flock of Sarus cranes flying over you. It always reminds me of this story, and it reminds me of this principle that actually the right to life and right to nature belongs to those that want to protect it and preserve it. In today's presentation, I would like to bring to your kind attention what I hold the most dear to me, the perception of Lumbini in the hearts of Buddhists around the world. Being born nearby, I've been influenced by the legacy of Lumbini, by its development, as well as by the stories of the Buddha's birth here. I imagine maybe perhaps 10 to 20 years later in the future, what kind of impact this mass tourism will have on the sanctity of Lumbini, on the environment of Lumbini. Day by day, Lumbini is less of a forest, more of a concrete Disney world. Before it gets too late, should we be thinking about sustainable environmental management of Lumbini? The Sarus crane, the tallest flying bird in the world, it thrives around this region of Kapilavastu and Lumbini. It's a critically endangered species, but the environment of Lumbini and Kapilavastu are very favorable. So an agreement was signed with Lumbini Development Trust and International Crane Foundation to lease about 256 acres of land in the master plan area to develop as a crane sanctuary for birds. As a result, in less than 2 years, several pairs of cranes moved in and have started nesting and growing their chicks. The area that was reserved for the crane sanctuary has been leased for 50 years. And to develop new hotel, a very huge meditation center, and several new monasteries around here. If this gets through, it will not only change the overall perception of the master plan, it will open unplanned and unsustainable development interests in Lumbini. Our colleagues have been calling it a pending project, but I call it impending doom. So this crane sanctuary was the vision of Nepalese crane conservationists like Rajendra Sawal, working with International Crane Foundation to create a crane sanctuary in the sacred birthplace of the Buddha. This is a very special place for me. And this is sort of where it all began, here at this wetland. And actually not too far from here, we planted trees when I was in 6th grade. As a young student, I used to come here as a volunteer. And later on over the years, I started bringing other students and organized nature clubs. I was so fascinated by all the wild animals that live here, the blue antelopes, the jackals. And it just made me fall in love with this small piece of forest here. This is not just greenery. When we look at it, it's nice and green, but this is home for so many little animals that are growing here, that are born here, that live here. This is their home. I felt a very strong sense of responsibility because this was a place that really inspired me as a young child. We'll be able to revive it, to inspire all the visitors who come here to learn about the nature, the harmony between the human and the nature. And if we can create these channels in the rainy season, the amount of rain that monsoon brings, and the amount of life it supports, we can create the wetland within one season. So we sort of wanted to first get the work done and then follow up with the procedures. Sometimes you have to outsmart the system. You have to sort of find a hack into it. So this grass here, the tall elephant grass, this is actually very dangerous for the soil here. What it does is it brings up all the acidity from the soil and destroys the chemistry in the soil. As a result, no other grass can grow easily. What we're trying to do is that we work with the local communities together. We're harvesting this grass. They can use it, for example, you can see here, they put it in bundles. They can use it to create their thatched roof for the houses. The invasive species can be sustainably harvested and created into crafts, created into baskets, and weaved into fabrics and such. It will generate employment for the local people. And it will also create participation with the local communities in wetland conservation and into managing the natural resources.
We make different types of products, starting from baskets to Buddha like this for the income generation of the women. The big Buddha is made out of water hyacinth, invasive plants which grows very fast on the surface of the water with the blue flowers, and the stem we use for weaving purpose. The most important part is for the livelihood enhancement of the women, income generation activities and preservation of our culture, that I am into it, and most of the people actually have not realized the value of those plants and values of all those natural resources in Nepal.
Yeah, there is no egg. I think it's not destroyed, it's losing with the people. I think it's with the jackals. Because I was seen here 3 times a jackal.
It used to be an old village, and when the master plan was created, the village was evacuated. And it has a very nice little terrain. It's a little bit higher on the ground, and then there are some ponds that are left over from the village days. So it has a very good ecology. It has very good soil in it. If we could maintain some water here throughout the summer, it would be good for all the bluebill antelopes and all the water birds that live around here. Various varieties of water lilies and tubers. So if we grow them around, they provide food for the wild boars. They also provide food for the cranes. And they encourage the aquatic life to grow. They encourage the native fish to populate, snails to come back. And whereas if there is too much acidity because of this grass, then all those organisms vanish. The cranes, they prefer the wetland because it's open. It has water and is spacious, and they can watch out if any jackals and foxes are coming at them. But after the chicks are hatched, as there is not enough food for them, they take the babies and walk in between these gullies and go to these lower areas in this depression. And usually there is water in here, the land is all marshy, and that's where they raise them for about a month and a half until they are bigger. Among all the nesting spots for the cranes, this used to be, the pond used to be number 1. Number 2 was in our crane sanctuary. Number 3 was here. So these two still nest every year. Well, the one option could be that we allow them to build this massive meditation center that they really want to build in here and the hotel complex here. But as a bargain, we get to manage and control all these natural areas. They don't even show the crane sanctuary here on the map. If you look at every UNESCO publication, every other master plan, you will see the nature areas.
यसको त अब हामीसँग छलफलको कुरै भएन फर्स्ट we should have to talk to about Sarus Crane Foundation. Is it necessary or not? I was a student of the Marxist and Lillian. I studied more than 20 years about it. Then after that I got that one. This is the Buddhism, Buddha's birthplace. Within the Buddhism, there is no conflict, I believe. It's a new development area. तोकेर दिएको छ माटो चाहिँदैन तपाईं कङ्क्रिट गर्नुस् सिमेन्टेड गर्नुस् ब्रिक पेभिङ गर्नुस् त्यो प्रब्लम छैन तर पहिलो कुरो हामी डिस्कस गर्नु पर्यो I am never follow with money. I told all the friends and requested the friend You should go and the money will follow you. I always try to, do what I can do and what I can contribute for Lumbini, not for the personal, for, looking of money. यसको लागि चाहिँ अब अलग्गै प्रपोजल हजुरले राख्नुहोस्, प्रपोजल हामी छलफल गर्छौँ। कि अहिले यो अनावश्यक तपाईँको डिबेट गरे छलफल गरे कुनै अर्थ छैन। हजुरले मैले भने अघि पनि त यसको लागि चाहिँ अब अलग्गै प्रपोजल हजुरले राख्नुहोस्, प्रपोजल हामी छलफल गर्छौँ। कि अहिले यो अनावश्यक तपाईँको राइट नाउ पर डे वी हेभ मोर देन 10,000 people came to visit Lumbini this month. If this place became as an international or world center for the Buddhists, what will happen at that time? That's why at that time we need more than 100,000 people's meditation center.
So people actually, they gave up all their home. They left without creating any trouble. But since then, nothing has been done for the people. The problem was that they actually made promise, which was a bad step. So this has been a very big struggle between the people who are displaced by here, who live around here, who have suffered really badly economically since then, and not being able to get employment, not being able to get a good education, not having any hospitals around for the health care. They feel like they have been betrayed. They gave up their land for this beautiful place. And they're really bitter about that when they see in their own farmlands that they gave up almost for free in some situations, or for a very meagerly amount of compensation, when they see the resorts being built and people making tons of profit. Where they are, they can't even feed their families. The challenge of environmental destruction around the world has progressed so badly, it has reached to such a point that we need urgent action from every factor of humanity. The poets, the artists, the activists, the politicians, as well as religious leaders, the spiritual communities. We need to find solutions, we need to find voices and support from every fraction of humanity we can. And among them, I believe the religious leaders do have a power to influence people. They have power to sort of request their communities, to inspire them to think creatively, to sense the urgency that the Mother Nature is facing. I have been researching into what are the elements within the teachings of the Buddha that provide answer and solution and could become a call to action for the climate problem.
The main teaching of Lord Buddha is compassion, and animals are very much a part of that. So I feel that they should also contribute, because these monasteries, some of these monasteries are very big. I'm sure they can afford to support animals. So we're hoping that they will partner with Animal Nepal at some point, and we can work together to better the lives of these long-suffering animals. The Sarus is so linked to the Buddha, and that is what, and here we are like thinking of doing away with the Crane Sanctuary. That's what I hear. And that I don't think is right. I've also heard that there are some monasteries which have kept these cranes in captivity, and that I don't think is allowed by the government of Nepal. And those cranes need to be rescued and sent to the sanctuary. So maybe that's something that will happen in the future. But the main challenge is saving the sanctuary, because there's a lot of vested interests out there who want to, convert this amazing natural habitat into a concrete jungle.
देखो हो मार दे बाहर जाए बस गया है बस या
If you look at the state of the garden, this is terrible. This is part of the sacred garden. The Buddha's birthplace is right like less than 100 meters away from here. This is an old mango garden grove. Literally thousands of people, they come here from all around the villages to celebrate the memory of Buddha's mother, Maya Devi. And in this sacred garden, they will make offerings. They will sing folk songs here, because it's a sacred mango garden attached to the birthplace of the Buddha. What is lacking here is a proper way to manage the solid waste. It communicates similar kind of message to all the visitors. If we manage to keep it clean and make it visible that environment is an important part. So that's why I'm planning to start once a month cleanup campaign to raise awareness, to bring the communities together, to talk about environment, to make environment as a sacred duty. It's a matter of changing perception. So much can happen if we just bring that awareness. Oleander, or as we call in local language, karbir. So we can actually take it apart and it can grow a new plant. It's just the seed, so this will help grow a new tree. It's very well known for its nectar. These flowers are blooming every year. Throughout the year, any season you come, you'll find one or two varieties always blooming here. These we planted in 2006. It still needs a little bit of mulching once a year, so watering in the very dry season, and it's doing fine. I think with very little effort even, all of this can be preserved. I think we only preserve when we realize the value of something, when we realize what it offers, when we acknowledge that it's there. When I was a young boy, I often came here to visit. Such a lovely experience of the nature. I fell in love with the Lumbini area just from these streams. The ancient sources that mention where Lumbini lies, the birthplace of Buddha, they very clearly mention the Lumbini lies on the western bank of a river known as Oil River or Tela River. Oil River in the sense that this area is rich in iron. So sometimes there is iron built up in the river and it kind of gives it oily look. My fear is that if we do not bring attention to this small vital link of life that flows through the forest,
people will forget soon enough about it. So this is a very historical river. It's a landmark that helped find where Lumbini is. And I think just by that virtue alone, it can perhaps escape from being turned into sewer system. So that's what we're planning to do, is to channel some of this water so that it goes and rotates in the wetland. So that way we do not block the river. We just recirculate the water in different areas and we create more wetlands. And wetlands can provide a great refuge for the cranes. See the cranes that were saved and protected by the Buddha is still residing here. I mean, Buddha is long gone, but cranes, they're still here. Every morning when you hear their sound, their call, it's like a call to conservation. They look, I'm here, protect life.
Is the future of Lumbini Crane Sanctuary safe? Is Lumbini Crane Sanctuary safe or not?
I always say that I was jinxed to be a monk when I was just a small baby. Before I learned to walk very properly, my grandmother, when they did a ceremony to shave the hair, she collected all my hair and made an offering here. So when I became a monk, my grandmother, only complaints she had was that, oh, she would never get to go to my wedding party. So I told her that you were the one who jinxed me. I don't have my grandmother and my grandfather anymore. They couldn't see. But she had seen me do the nunnery, do the girls' college, build the school. She used to come from time to time and advise on the nunnery and thing. And she was very proud. She was very proud and happy then. Yeah. She realized that I didn't miss out on the family, that I have many children now, a larger family and hundreds of kids. When I was a young kid, this is my first experience to the cranes. I represented my school to join in. And it helped. It helped to create a new generation of conservationists. So we hope to inspire. That's why we brought together 20 different schools around Lumbini. And jointly, there are several activities. So one of them is painting Sarus crane and nature and conservation. Also, they will join in the bird festival. They've yesterday gone on a bird watching tour with experts. So the idea is to bring them and help them get to know nature, get to know the birds. So we hope new generation of conservationists would emerge from here.
Many times people ask me, how do you tell the male Sarus crane from the female Sarus crane? Well, the males are a little bigger, but they look exactly the same, except when they do their duet. And this is a very loud call they give when they want other cranes to leave their land. It's called a unison call or duet. And the male lifts his wings up very high like this during the duet. And his voice is much lower than the female. And the female never opens her wings when they call together. So that's how you can very easily tell the male Sarus crane from the female. And in many cultures all over the world, people love cranes because they can see the male and female are very devoted to each other, and they lavish care on their chick, just like we lavish care on our children.
With over 222 species of birds that take refuge here, that live here, we are looking forward to developing a new kind of Lumbini. I believe it is our moral obligation to make sure that we put together ideas to ensure a pollution-free, sustainable Lumbini, a home where our meditation practice can be fruitful, as well as the lives of so many sentient beings can continue smoothly. On the left side, there is a Draw Your Bird banner here. We would love for you to draw what comes to your mind when you think of a bird. So please draw a bird from your imagination, from your perception, or how you see a bird, and that will be a memento for us. So please draw and sign your name underneath.
They are recognizing more and more the value or the importance of this place. Either they are religiously linked, either they are Buddhists or not. It can be an example or a good example for everyone.
Our aim for this year is to transform this area into 100% renewable energy. So we've replaced the electrical grid here with the solar panels. We're installing 365 solar panels throughout Lumbini area. We'd like to have the visitors an opportunity, an alternative to use a boat to arrive here. But there are meditation centers around, and the noise produced by the engines is a very constant disturbing noise. And this is contrary to the whole idea of this birthplace. So we are going to create a beautiful green belt, 8 meters on each side of this brick paving. From there onward, we will plant a wild hedge to separate the human world and leave the area for the natures. So the birds that live in the water body on the other side would not be disturbed by humans walking around. Government of Nepal, UNESCO, UNDP, they didn't rescue this place. They didn't take care of it forever. But people continued their relationship with the place. They forgot the history, they forgot the meaning of the place, but they continued carrying on their rituals that established their bond with the sanctity of the place. There's this huge disconnect between presenting a site, designing a beautiful city, making it nice for the visitors and pilgrim center, versus the living culture. And living culture has all been displaced. Partly because nobody wrote about them, nobody narrated or documented about them. The government of Nepal hired a Japanese architect who was studying in Harvard. He had no idea. There were no anthropologists as part of that team. There was no social experts. There were no community workers as part of that whole team that designed. Most of the plan was drafted by engineers who lived either in Kathmandu or in Harvard. With no study of the local custom, culture, and they didn't realize that there was such a deeply enriched cultural heritage here, where people established such deep bond with the place, with its natural sanctity, with the trees, the pond here. When the mothers gather here, they would offer oil, vermilion, flowers, the leaf from sacred bale trees and such. But as the UNESCO recommendation of saving the World Heritage Site is, it prohibits such items from being offered. And on a book, it might seem like such a scientific recommendation, but for people, it's a matter of heart and faith. But the community did not have a voice. As I told you, no one wrote about their history. They didn't have educated people who could raise this voice and concern to the community. So it was all lost. My intention in joining Lumbini Development Trust, when the Prime Minister asked me, was of course to save the Lumbini Crane Sanctuary and to sort of find a pathway to preserve the nature, the wetland, the trees and everything. But as I walked in, I realized what I had walked into.
We would like to work together with you to make the local communities benefit from the tourism.
There is no clear way how we do it. Government talks about that, okay, when there is tourism, there will be livelihood. But if you look at the patterns, for now, it's burden on the local community. When they buy something from the local villages, they think they're contributing to local economy. It's actually creating artificial price inflation because the production is not high, it's not growing.
Yeah.
Whatever comes to the market, hotels buy it. So the same potato that was selling for 20 rupee kg now goes to 48 rupee kg. The poor farmers, they are struggling to buy it for their own consumption.
Yeah.
So the price is higher for the people who live there as well, who do not get any benefit from it. So I believe that the prosperity, economic influence, whatever comes in Lumbini should be shared with the people who helped create it. Their culture, their belief system, their way of life is deeply embedded with what Lumbini really means. I'm encouraging the women's communities to sort of start services there that would benefit and serve the pilgrims, but also benefit their livelihood. We might be asking Karuna Girls School, one of the women's school that we founded, to run a small bookshop, because there is really no bookshop in the Lumbini area for the pilgrims, the visitors, and this has been a request from many visitors when they come there, with a craft store in there. If there could be somebody who uses local clay from the Lumbini area, Kapilbasti area, produces little terracotta figurines, flowers, birds, and that could be sold there. And this would be nice because this used to be the way of life. And it's disappearing slowly. They would sell the craft produced by local women in Lumbini, craft that are produced using the wetland materials, the forest plants that come from Lumbini itself, and this will help the livelihood of the local women.
The plants related to Buddha's life are of immense importance and immense concern of all people and pilgrims. They visit Lumbini every time. So it would definitely be a very dream project to revive the plant, animal of the Lumbini region back to Buddha's time. But recently, with climate change impact and the anthropogenic pressure, it is frequently heard that Lumbini is surrounded by huge number of invasive plants that may replace the original plants of the area. So it is very important to have a proper management of these species. There are some initiatives already taken to use the fiber and some materials from those available invasive plants in wetland ecosystem. It would be a very great idea to make the utilization of these weights in controlling their population on one hand, and the other hand making some products that the people who visit Lumbini take as a souvenir back home.
Sarus cranes are very different from other birds because they're enormous. They're as tall as a man. And their calls carry for several miles in the still morning air. And they do a beautiful courtship dance. And they bow and they leap and they run around together. Also, they're very good guard birds. If they see danger, they start calling. And they just have a beautiful presence about them. They're always looking around, responding to a variety of factors in their environment. We always want to conserve more wetlands, more natural areas for cranes and other wildlife. But I'm concerned about the quality of the environment with pollution going into the rivers and into the skies. That's not good for people, that's not good for cranes. I'm very concerned about the air pollution down here from all these cement factories, and I hope the air can be cleaned up.
There are various reasons of air pollution in Lumbini. One of them main reason is like deforestation around, and the air of Lumbini is more polluted. I mean, in terms of black carbon and other dust material than Kathmandu's. Air pollution means there is a less activity of pollinators. There are very few pollinators visiting in the flower. Maybe the number of flower of plant may also be decreased. Therefore, there are lots of ways the pollution impact plant, animal, microorganisms, insect, butterflies, and all those things. Still see the bird that is very closely related to Buddha's life and even the Buddha's philosophy.
So all the cranes, they come together in a flock. They will hang out by the riverbed area and feed in the farms. Sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to witness their full moon night parties, I like to call them, where you can see up to 70 to 100 cranes together, and all their little juveniles, they gather as well. Juveniles, that's where they find their mates. Once they find the mate that they would like to build nests with, then they sort of leave their parents and fly away and start a new family. So these 2 months, as it's becoming dry, the wetlands are dry, they will come to the river areas, and we begin to see them in large numbers.
So this cycle of nature that you have with the monsoons and so on is very important. The Chinese made a huge mistake, and so did we in some wetlands, by thinking that if you have water all the time, that's really a good thing, but it's not. For example, aquatic plants produce tubers when it dries up, and they survive that way, and Sarus cranes are tube breeders.
Right. Once we have a basic office here, and in the nesting season, we could have a Wi-Fi and put a camera, a nest camera, so that we could go online directly and you can see in real time. And I thought this would be such a wonderful idea. The clinic area would be here. We'll try and create a little few pens for injured cranes and such. In such a close proximity with the stupa, all the people that come to visit, they will be drawn here to rest here for an hour to learn about the nature. And once they have seen what wetlands look like, what they're about, read a little bit about it along the walk path, then they arrive here. And if you can go around the stupa, this will appeal to the Buddhist mind, because in Buddhist pilgrimage there is a component to go around the sacred spaces, and it could be also promoted for walking meditation. The monks and nuns can just peacefully walk in the nature and meditate. We can put small wooded platforms where they can just rest, do some meditation in the evening. This would really offer a good experience. We have this very, very precious resource here. This needs a bit of management, needs a bit of influx of investment, and this could become a lot for the people. And that's the reason why we've been fighting to save it.
Lumbini is a epicenter worldwide, and it can be a wonderful way to share the message with both local people and visitors, the importance of the conservation of nature. The wonderful news is that the site is still intact. And I think the things of nature are so much more complicated and so much more beautiful than anything that humans can make. And they're all here. And they should be protected for generations to come, to sit under the trees like Buddha did and understand the priorities.